Welcome to the Scaling with Agility podcast. I'm Yuval, and today with me is Andrey Knourenko from ARAS Software. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation because I like to look at the arc of the journey of scaling with agility that companies take. And in a recent conversation with Andrey, we reflected on, the different things that happened in ARAS's journey towards agility, and we thought it might be interesting to share it with a wider audience. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you again. We know each other for quite a long time, and thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So, do you want to share a bit with the audience about ARAS Software and your role there, and maybe how we met? How did the journey start?
Sure. So ARAS is a PLM company, right? It's a PLM. It's a product lifecycle management, and not to go too in depth, it's used by manufacturing companies, anybody who has designed, manufacture anything, right? A physical and any object kind of from, I don't know, simple chair to rocket engines. It's a bill of materials, right? And companies go through gathering requirements and design and change management and manufacture process planning and et cetera, up to the maintenance and all this life cycle of a product, right? And what's interesting, everybody does it very differently. There are certain kind of methodologies, but everybody does it differently. So essentially, you cannot just write one piece of software used by everyone. It has to be kind of a platform that has to be customizable, adjustable, right, configurable, etc. So because everyone does it differently, need to adjust that software to their needs or build maybe specific applications on top of the platform. So this is what we have done with ARAS. When I joined ARAS 2005, it was a small company, maybe 20 people. So right now it's one of leading PLM companies competing with the big companies like Dassault, PTC, Siemens. Yeah, so that was an interesting journey. When I joined, there was a few people development team. And as we grew, team grew, and we needed some kind of more well-defined methodology and agile approach kind of that scales. And this is where we met Yuval. It's probably was 2017 or something around that time.
What we think, yes.
Yeah, he provided us with some safe training. And from there, we started practicing safe. And we can talk about this, how kind of it's evolved over the time.
Yeah. So funny enough, one of Andre's colleagues, John, found me for this, not knowing that I'm already working with a couple of the other PLM players. So Siemens has been a long time client, and I've worked with PTC as well. The size, still on my list, maybe one day. They're up the road here in Waltham, right? It's like the center of the PLM universe in Massachusetts, right around between 95 and 495. We have all the players well represented here in the area. So maybe going back to how we started, do you recall what was the goal? What were some of the problems with the existing ways of working that made you think about we need something different?
Yeah, as I said, we had a small team originally, and probably by the time we started, and we met with you, team grew to about 50, 60 people. Clearly was kind of difficult to scale it up without applying some maybe formal methodology, right? And we kind of trying somehow kind of homegrown, the agile methods and whatever. I don't think we're clearly looking for something different, right? That can scale, that can have a kind of better defined kind of approach and how things needs to be done, whatever. Yes, John Boozer, whom you mentioned, was kind of leading this. We talked about this a little bit. Kind of safe was clearly scaled agile. So definitely there are some other scaled agile methodologies probably even at that time, but we somehow decided, okay, safe probably something based on the name fits us. So, and this is how kind of John approached you, and we started the training. I think the goal was, again, as I said, to be able to scale, to be still agile, but to be able to scale across multiple teams. And most members of the teams were pretty young, right after the college, never practiced any kind of formal methodology. So I think SAFe also played a big role in kind of teaching our developers how to apply formal methodology, work across kind of multiple teams, apply an agile method.
Yeah, I think, reflecting back, how we started was the way I typically like to start with organizations, which I think we didn't dive straight into safe training. We actually have done a workshop ahead of that to figure out, does safe make sense here? What are the other approaches? What do we want to do? And one thing I still remember is we've done the speedboat exercise where I asked you to break out into smaller groups and try to draw. What do you think ARAS is at the time? And I remember there was a conversation about, as you were growing up, it became a flotilla of speedboats that needed to somehow get together and create the power of the scale that you have without becoming the massive, slow, aircraft carriers that your competitors are. So that was what we were trying to do with the scaled agility at the time. So, and then, as you're saying, we started the training and we started deploying and finding consistency. So let's maybe forward a couple of months, years. What were the outcomes? Did it really help?
I think it did. Ultimately, I can tell right now we switched to something different, but we can talk about this. But yeah, I think we, as you said, we did, you did some training for actually executive team, and kind of we discussed if it's a good methodology for us. I think kind of the leadership team was on board with implementing this. And then we started slowly with, I think, one team and then couple teams. So we did not jump into this right with whatever 5 or 6 teams we had at that time. So yeah, we, for 2, 3 PIs, we kind of trying to increase number of teams switching to SAFe. That seems to be working. I think people liked kind of that how things are well defined. The PI plannings was a good way to everybody get in the same room and brainstorm and discuss. So yeah, I think as a result, probably after few PIs, again, I don't remember even right now exactly, kind of we started, all the teams start practicing SAFe. And I think it went pretty well. As I said, it taught teams of way how to kind of proper apply well-defined agile methodology and scale it across the teams. But I think first kind of thing that kind of was disrupting was COVID, right? It was 2000, beginning of 2000. The COVID started, so we had to switch to online
Hmm.
PI plannings. And that's, I think, kind of looking back, I think that's ultimately had a big impact on our practice of SAFe, because it's one thing when everybody's in the same room, right? Everybody talks, everybody's kind of, you see people, whatever, you can approach people, and different when everybody's behind the screen, can hide. I think over the time, people started using kind of those formalities of SAFe process, right? It's a lot of procedures and kind of whatever. This is this session, that session, inspect and adapt. Started using this kind of hiding behind this to get less stress. The planning maybe was out of their planning, whatever they thought needs to be done ahead of time. This during API planning, people just kind of whatever, did nothing much. I think kind of that was definitely with moving from live face-to-face format to online had its impact. Uh, Overall, again, I think SAFE is well defined, but probably a bit too prescriptive kind of approach, right? And
So
again, in combination with not being able to meet face to face most of the time, right? And whatever that has its effect. So yeah,
before we go to the changes that you've made, which I'm really curious about, if we reflect on it's April or February 2020, COVID is making its way to the US, but it's not here yet. What are the improvements in R&D, engineering, business performance that you've been able to achieve with your safe-based way of working? And what are some things where you still felt didn't work that well, or what are some of the trade-offs that Safe introduced? Even before we go to COVID. I'm
right.
curious how COVID changed that, but
I think yeah, uh, as I said, on the positive side, we definitely will struggled to kind of scale across multiple teams, kind of whatever methodology, kind of agile methodology we used at that time. And SAFe definitely was helpful because all these PI plannings, kind of open boards, like everybody understands what they kind of do, what's the plans for the next iteration. It was very helpful. I think that's increased also transparency. I think it was always with at that moment, right before we started using Safe, was a little bit for people outside of each development team, even for different development teams, for product management, for anybody, kind of marketing and the other peoples in the company was a little bit of mystery. What's going to be in the next release, right? What's development is working right now. I think the transparency significantly improved with because now we had a common kind of boards, right? The common plans for the next PM. Everybody knew, so our releases did not align with PIs. It was different schedule, but still it was a clear which PI and what's done, and this PI will go into which release. So transparency and predictability of what will be done. I think those two were for at least for the people outside of development was I think was a significant improvements.
so,
Yeah. No, yeah, and for as I said, for the developers inside the team, again, it's brought some structure, some ability again to kind of understand maybe what other teams do, and ability to apply certain methodology. This PI planning week was iteration was quite good actually. Again, when we did it face to face, right, we tried to do some innovation and kind of some hackathons during this week, etc., etc. So I think, yeah, it was a lot of positive momentum going as you said to February.
and I think you recalling some of our conversations, I think, and you said earlier, a lot of the team was young. So you had a core of very experienced people, very, very experienced people from the early days. And as you grew, you had a lot of people that you felt like needed to get up to speed. And that was at least one of the goals for using Safe. And I'm curious whether you felt like this created teams and people that through the transparency, through what we've practiced, were able to get up to speed and become full players.
Yeah, I think definitely again splitting in more organized manner into formal teams, right? And having in each team some structure with a scrum master, with the ability for young people who join the team to kind of learn from other members of the team. Each team has maybe slightly different approach how to do this, but still there was kind of mentors inside the team. So yeah, that definitely helped young people to, I believe, came up to speed much faster. And it's also, again, to create some structure for them where they kind of as a new people and not knowing product well and code base well, kind of they will, that helped them to get up to speed faster than before. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we changed the team structure, the team topology as part of this, right?
We did. Actually, it's another interesting thing. First few years, we almost had very static kind of teams that didn't change, right? And then that was one of lessons we did. We kind of realized, well, yeah, that's stable teams good, but not kind of forever, stable. So we start moving people from team to team, and actually, it's caused a little bit even pushback because people kind of started after a couple of years feeling like very comfortable in where they are. But I think that's another maybe a lesson learned, that if you let people to stay in that static position for too long, it becomes too comfortable, right? Right. So you need to shake up things a little bit time to time. And yeah, so we, in the later years, especially when we became, as I said, the remote and not everybody was sitting, because we also kind of organized even offices, the team was sitting kind of in the same areas, etc. But with COVID, all this gone and everybody started working remotely or primarily remotely, that definitely changed. And we also started moving more people and exchanging them between different teams.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is the team structure, if it's too static for too long, you get comfortable and you don't challenge, your
Yes,
comfort zone, and
I think it's
you don't value.
clear.
And I think the same it can be said about ways of working, right? If you get stuck in your rigid ways of working for too long, there's probably an opportunity to do it better. I mean, we don't necessarily need to continuously improve, but at least periodically improve. And I think it's a good segue to your realization that you might want to change some things in how safe works for you because of COVID, but maybe for other reasons. So,
Yeah, so we continued for a few more years, but I think we increasingly started feeling that kind of safe method. That the team grew actually to, overall, we had over 150 people, some of them system teams, a product security team and some DevOps teams, etc. But still, the team grew quite a bit. At the same time, again, I think with the remote and people over the years finding the ways how to reduce their stress, let me put it this way, kind of, and the safe to be very kind of prescriptive. Okay, you do that session, you do this inspect and adapt, you do this. A lot of this turn into practicing for the sake of methodology, right? Rather than for,
I call it agile theater.
right,
It became a
exactly.
safe theater.
Yeah. So I think we got increasingly aware that maybe something needs to be changed. And I think kind of a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago, yeah, probably a year and a half, we started looking for maybe something that can replace how we do things. We get together a group of our kind of senior people from different functions, architects, developers, scrum masters, release management, this kind of, etc. And I asked them actually to brainstorm and to come up with how we can modify the way the practice agile, and kind of identify what's are the biggest problems, and how they can kind of suggest how we can change things. So ultimately, we ended up with something based on less. It's a
Hmm.
large scale Scrum, right?
Hmm.
But with some tweaks specific for whatever we do, right? And for our type of development and for maybe type of developers and development teams we have. Yeah, so we switched to that probably a year and a half ago, maybe a little more right now. And
So I am curious what I don't know, we haven't talked about it before. So I'm really curious, what does that look like? What are the tweaks?
I think one of the major thing was kind of we did not have those big product increments anymore,
Mhm.
right? And didn't plan for the whole whatever, right?
So you
8 weeks.
plan sprint by sprint,
Yeah, we
essentially?
print the sprint by sprint. That gives us more agility.
Mhm.
It's also eliminated a lot of this again pre-planning ahead of time and then doing not much during uh, innovation and planning, iteration. So now every iteration was kind of weekend iteration, but people spend small amount of time beginning of each iteration of planning this, and also ability to much faster pivot if it's needed, right? Which is in our business was pretty common. So one of specific things for us, we had something called the special team, where was kind of group of mentors, and each mentor was also from different function,
Okay.
like a QA maybe manager, right, and development manager and architect, etc., etc. And they're all senior people, and first each one of them was kind of responsible for a particular team, but word responsible maybe was playing the role of a mentor. If team actually doing excellent, that person has to do nothing, right? If team has some issues maybe, right, or how to collaborate with whatever some other team, right, or split the work, or because there are always dependencies, etc., right? And they cannot resolve it by themselves, so maybe those mentors kind of step up and help team to resolve those issues, right? Sometimes teams had some questions about how to address specific topic. And another thing, again, this team also get together regularly and
Mhm.
had their own kind of small whatever
Sounds to me
sprint.
like what we call in Nexus is a scaling framework that's similar in ways to large scale Scrum. It's the thing that comes
Yeah.
from the Scrum.org world from Ken Schwaber. And it has a concept called the Nexus Integration Team,
Mhm.
which is responsible for the integration, for looking across things. So
For
it's not
looking
similar to
across
that.
this, yeah, how to kind of, if we need to do the tweaks maybe in overall process, they will first kind of to analyze
Mhm.
it and suggest how we adjust, why maybe single backlog doesn't work and we need to have two different backlogs, one for whatever kind of for new functionality, another. So kind of topics like this when they're played, we switch tools lately, especially kind of a lot of new AI tools, right, came into use, and we started using something called DX. This is development experience. It's one of the tools that measures development experience more closely, right? Because it's integrated with Visual Studio, with Git, etc., right? It's actually can tell you how many commits done by each team.
Like fishbowl, right?
So one of those, and that I think kind of very valuable, provided very valuable information also, right? And again, production and all these teams, all these tools, right? And kind of training for the team. That was all kind of responsibility of that, whatever special team that kind of was.
So I'm curious. Back to you stopped managing PIs. You moved to managing iteration by iteration. How did each sprint look like? What did the planning across these teams look like, and were these teams really self-sufficient, streamlined teams? And how many dependencies did you have across teams at that point?
There are dependencies, but I would say um, it was it was not very difficult to resolve them, right? So we definitely we had a big platform. This ARAS Innovator, it's a big platform, but I think whatever team worked on definitely gonna had the dependencies, but we try definitely to split functionality that way, that to minimize them. So yeah, dependency existed, but I think not to extend it that prevent teams to be significantly independent and plan the iteration pretty quickly. I think teams spend maybe a couple hours just at the beginning of iteration to plan it. Prior to that week, whatever, before the iteration starts, I think it was kind of a common event with representatives of different teams to review the backlog and to decide kind of what's overall with product management, what the teams will be working on, kind of next iteration. Yeah. So I think that's reasonably well.
So maybe I think I think it's good for people to understand the perspective. In my head, there's a narrative here, which is that what I see in a lot of organizations is something along these lines. You can think about it as a flipped pyramid, which is essentially that often when I meet them, a lot of the work in the organization requires a lot of teams. It requires even a lot of product groups. And a lot of the time, the value of something like SAFe makes sense because it enables you to, like you said, scale or tackle delivery when you need to incorporate deliverables from multiple teams. But there's a price that you pay for this. The price that you pay for this structure is, yes, you can manage such a delivery, a release, a project across those teams, but there's a lot of overhead to it. And eventually, what a lot of the organizations that I work with strive towards and achieve is this sort of structure, where most of the work can be delivered by empowered teams. And I that's what I hear in the story that you're telling me, and what I recall, that you were trying to create these sort of teams. The more of the work in the organization fits into this layer, the base of the pyramid, which is empowered teams that don't really need much from each other, the less you need the more lightweight structure you can manage.
Right.
If I look at the conversation I typically have with organizations that are starting this journey, and it's probably similar. If we had the AI recording our conversations back in 2017, we would be able to go back to it, but it was in person and we didn't transcribe. We were talking about, can we do something that's lighter weight? Do we need the structure of SAFe? And a lot of the time, the answer is we might need something like this for now, but we want to build the architectural runway, the team, the team capabilities, so that over time we create it more as a platform. We can create a solid architecture, like solid software architecture. We need solid team architecture, which enables you to get rid of a lot of these practices. Like, do you really need to go into in-depth planning for the quarter ahead if you can resolve dependencies very quickly? Probably not. Does it make sense to plan a quarter ahead if you want to be very agile, if your customers are constantly shifting direction and there's business opportunity? Maybe not. Maybe it makes sense to talk about the vision and the strategy for the quarter, but not plan it in depth. And, all of these are evolutions that whether companies continue to use SAFe but change what they mean by PI planning, or whether they shift to something else, all of these make sense. For me, the important thing that I'm hearing is you were following the principles of agility and constantly trying to find what's the most effective way to achieve alignment, to achieve transparency, to achieve predictability. How can we reduce the overhead? that we
Right.
pay for getting these things. And that's exactly what I like to see. That's what I like
Right.
about this story.
I tell you, even with the safe structure still in place, we went through multiple internal kind of iterations. Like, for example, we had some point we decided it would be better if we have a separate architectural team
Mm.
or whatever group at least, right? And that group will do the architecture and then whatever give it to the teams to implement, etc. I think over time it's also we finally realized that's maybe not the best way to do this. We ultimately split that group and made the architects a part of the teams, and they might be moving from team to team over the time. It's not permanent, but at least they part of the team. They do architecture along with the team, discussing with them. So rather than do it completely separately and then kind of bringing this to the team and then have a lot of questions and they actually go through the cycle of again proving that architecture to the team because it's something what's not invented by us, somebody brought it from outside. So I think we went through all this, as you said, trying to find the way, the most agile, the most productive, the least wasteful way kind of implementing software. Yeah. And I think my experience over this year shows that it's highly depends definitely on whatever teams you have, right? People in the teams, because what might work for one organization and even for some subset of organization might not work for another because maybe one organization has mostly very experienced guys or whatever, right? High level individuals, and that needs to be quite a different agile, still agile, but quite different agile principles applied over than maybe the team with a more kind of middle and junior type of developers. What type of software develop? Kind of is it something completely new, or it's just developing maybe some parts of software that's quite typical, like some UI, no, whatever. I'm not saying UI is can be interesting, but again, it's kind of you clearly understand what needs to be done, while maybe in some other components here, it's more like experimentation and it's something kind of that's maybe unique for your product and for your company. So yeah, it highly depends, and I think honestly, my looking back, I would say my experience right now shows, yeah, you have continue experimenting. You have not afraid to apply maybe different agile principle even to different parts of your organization. Find whatever works the best
Be
for
agile
you.
about your agile,
Right,
right?
exactly. Yeah, be agile about agile. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next iteration of your journey as a company was that a private equity firm, saw the success of ARAS and made an investment and, tried to amplify its value. I've heard different stories from what happens to companies and their ways of working when private equity gets involved. So I'm curious, how did that affect, if at all, your ways of working as an engineering organization, as a product delivery organization?
I think was I don't think it's affect us right away after private equity company acquired ARAS. I think definitely we went through some due diligence process. They were interested in how we do the development. I think we checked most of the kind of check boxes, right? Methodology, we did agile, we did all kind of product security, added code analysis, kind of all those kind of things that kind of needs to be done in mature software development product. We had a decent, I still believe, kind of CI/CD process, a lot of automation, things like this. So in that sense, I don't think they kind of pushed us to change quite a bit. Of course, you constantly have a push to increase your productivity. You have to deliver more and faster and better
Mm.
and with less people, etc., etc. Which is, yeah, kind of nothing new. But I think, yeah, kind of that pressure also kind of let us realize over time that probably kind of intuition we get with the safe and everything I described before kind of needed improvement, right? And that was part of the kind of the reasons why we switched. I think lately it's definitely had a little bit more impact. I think we company now goes through some restructuring because again, private equity have some plans about the company, and this is why kind of there's some changes in the company. But again, as I said, for maybe a few years after the acquisition, definitely was a pressure to deliver more and faster and better, but I don't think it had a direct impact on how exactly we implement Agile. I think
Mhm.
my impression overall, private equity companies, maybe different companies approach it differently. They kind of, it's up to you. What's the interest in that? Yes, you deliver the result. How that result is delivered, you doing this type of Agile or this or whatever kind of it. It's up to you.
Yeah, which I think is the right the right
Exactly.
attitude, right? The one other thing that I'm seeing and having more and more conversations about is even regardless of the engineering organization, if you look at the different private equity firms call these things different things, but the full potential plan, the investment thesis, I don't know what it was called. In your case, the projects, the initiatives on that plan often have a lot of uncertainty, a lot of potential, but also a lot of uncertainty. And I'm starting to see private equity firms come to me and realize that the traditional PMO style
Mhm.
implementation for these projects is falling flat for the really complex stuff, both from the perspective of it assumes you know everything up front and just follow a plan, but also when it comes to how it engages with people. So they're starting to realize that there's maybe a better way to engage with the people in their portcos in implementing these plans, as well as be more agile and adaptive. So I think it's an interesting direction. It's still early days for doing that in that space.
I mean, clearly, in the last year or so, the big elephant in the room is right AI, right?
Mhm.
It also has already and will have a big impact on probably how teams will work, right? And everybody's trying to adapt right now. Things changing very, very fast. But yeah, I think I'm sure at the end of it, we will see maybe also different ways how a team approach the teamwork, how they collaborate, and etc. Because all this AI development methods will impact how a team do things.
I think we will need to be even more agile about
Yeah,
our agile, or we need to be more agile about our ways of working in the age of AI. Every week there's something new that affects um how we work. And I mean, again, with the involvement of people, I think one other aspect of that is especially with both the positive potential of AI, but also the fear that it brings with it to everybody. Goldart used to say to talk about the fact that you won't get very far with asking people to cut the branch that they're sitting on.
right.
And I think
Yes,
there's a lot of that going around.
yes,
And you need to, I think some of the answer is to be human centric about it and involve and empower people to figure out how they will work, not just tell them this is the way you'll be using AI or everybody has to
mm,
use AI. It's let's figure out how does it look like for us to become more productive using AI, not cutting the engineering headcount by
right.
half because of AI, but should we, you know, how do we grow revenue double figure every year with the same engineering organization that we have using the force multiplier of AI? That's
Yeah, I mean it's a big of course change the way how software develop. Uh, with AI is quite different, right, from what we did before. It's clearly a new way to develop software. I think the faster developers will jump on board and will learn how to do this, and the more valuable they will be for the company. But I think, yeah, there is a lot of nervousness right now, kind of among especially developers maybe with less experience, right? Um, yeah, job market softened clearly, and that also makes people honestly less productive because, unfortunately, because people felt kind of nervous, right? Threatened, maybe try to find another job, whatever the kind of they trying to secure kind of their lifestyle, and yeah, that takes their focus from what they need to do, right? I think, I mean, all this fact, it's a complex process. Yeah, unfortunately, kind of we, or fortunately, we need to go through that. How it will evolve and how which impact it will have, and again, how the teams work, how teams collaborate, how the software development overall will evolve. That's will remains to be seen.
So maybe to finish, if you had one message, let's say for a big billboard on Route 128, where other VPs of engineering, heads of engineering, R&D are driving back and forth. What's one message that you're taking away from your agility journey so far that you think is still relevant or even more relevant
Hmm.
for the next 5 years?
I think we already kind of articulated that. I think you have to be agile about agile, right? You have to not afraid to pick things maybe from different methodologies that work for you. Don't be afraid that, uh, of course, it needs to be all coordinated, otherwise it will be a mess. But don't afraid to implement somewhat different, maybe agile approaches with the different parts of your organization. And you have to constantly experiment and to see what works for you, right? And what will deliver the better performance, right? The better velocity. And again, I think it's a development velocity. It's a complex topic, right? It's not only how many lines of code you produced, right? Again, it's how well developers integrate into this, right? How happy they are, and because happy developer, more productive developer, right? And how do you find the balance between all of this to maximize? I think one of the good lessons I was constantly, I think that applies to whatever you, I remember you taught us as a part of saves, individual speed of individual doesn't matter, right? What only counts is speed of the whole train, right? And if by train you understand the whole your organization, right? I think you have to find a way how to maximize that speed, right?
Mhm.
How to change pieces of that overall
Optimize
train,
the whole.
right? So the whole train goes with a maximum speed, yeah. And that's not easy.
No, it's not easy, but it's what keeps us going. It's what people like us have been doing. We're software developers, right? We're software architects. We've just moved to architect human systems in recent years, but it's the same thing, or a lot of the same thing. Humans are just more complex than software, although we sometimes like to ignore it. Awesome. Andrei, this has been great. Thanks for sharing
No, you're welcome.
what happened
Thanks
in
for
the
having
in
me.
the journey. I haven't been in touch for a while, but I like to see the principles are still strong with you and with ARAS. So anything that you would like to leave us with, if people have additional questions for you or want to hear more about your story, where do they find you these days?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Yeah, actually, we didn't touch upon that. I kind of parted ways with Aras just several weeks ago. I'm kind of have now time to think more about what was done right, what was done could be done better. right? And kind of enjoying a little time off, and we'll see what's the next. Yeah, but yeah, feel
Sounds
free to
good.
reach out, guys. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we'll link to Andrei's LinkedIn profile in the show notes, and that's all for us for today. Thank you for tuning into the Scaling with Agility podcast. And if you like us, subscribe and check out our other episodes.
Thank you, and happy holidays and happy new year.
Happy holidays. Bye, Andre.